When I look back to where I come from, my birth, and everything, starting from, the dreams and the stories that my mother was telling me from childhood, it really shows me that there was something mystical about my life that I couldn't understand, looking to the things that have been happening around me, the situation around me, the events that were taking place. I will state some of them in my testimony. But when I look back and look all these things, I come to discover, to know that my life had a special assignment, a special meaning, because growing into the things of God now made me to understand through the study of the Bible that there are men of God who are called into ministry, and there are men of God who are born into ministry. I'm saying this because looking from childhood, I remember when I started seeing my first vision. I'll call it my first vision, even though in my growing up I had experiences where there was this thing that was happening every time to me. They call it sleepwalking, if I may. But my spirit from childhood had this power over my body, that so much so that I could be sleeping. If I am in a dream or in a vision in my sleep, I could wake up. I remember there are instances where I will see myself, I'm already outside the door, or I've already opened the door, I'm outside, and because of the cold weather, I will see that, I'm outside, or I wake up. So my spirit could lead my body, even though my body was asleep. It was something that I couldn't understand. Like, I was living that isolated life, worried and without knowing certain things that you wouldn't share with people. I remember I joined some groups. I joined some groups in Swaziland, where I was born, because I was born in Swaziland, and then my family migrated to South Africa. That's where I started the ministry, even though my calling into assignment, or my introduction into my assignment, began whilst I was still in Swaziland, because I studied in Swaziland, Gakupuga High School. So God has been so wonderful. I remember when we were, going to camps, going outside as kids, growing. I was afraid to sleep. Sometimes we'd be out there for about, sometimes 3 days, from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I will not sleep for all the 3 days until I sleep at home, because I was afraid of what was happening in my life. Every time I go to bed, every time I go to sleep, I was doing these funny things. I woke up and stuff like that without knowing why. When I was looking back from there, when I was 12 years old, I saw this one dream. I will call it a dream or a vision, where I saw the world turning and everything was just becoming a mess on the earth. Everywhere the skies were red, and there were winds and all these things that were taking place on the earth. And it was as if there was a great war that was coming to destroy the earth. But it was as if it was brought by people that were not touching the ground, even though they were on horses, but they were not touching the ground, and the horses were not touching the ground. It was something that from 12 years, it kept me worried, and there were a few people who were trying to run away, and it was like in that dream, I was old in the dream, and there was one that was waiting with me, that was standing with me somewhere, who was showing me all the things that were happening. And it was as if I'm being introduced and I'm being shown what will take place in the end. I woke up in that dream, and I will not say it drained me, but it gave me so much fear. So much fear. I used to live in fear as a child until, the journey continued until I was 20 years, 21, 20, 22 upwards. When I received another vision, I call it a great vision, where I was introduced into a Mara level, into a Mara dream, or into a Mara vision. It was just during the day. It was actually in the morning, and I had, I went, it was a weekend, it was a Sunday. I went out to fetch like firewood. We were in the areas. So I went to fetch firewood. As I was there, this is a voice that called out to me. He used my first name. He called out to me. So he called out to me, but it was as if the voice was inside me. Like when they strike your ears and they go like inside, and I felt that, and there was so much fear that covered me in that place. I ignored it. I just touched my ears like this. I ignored it, and he called again the second time. It was now as if it's outside, but it was coming with more authority and fear, such voice that I had never heard before. And the third time, it was louder than the second time. I was afraid. I left everything. I left the bush there. I left everything there. And he said to me, as I became weak and I fell down, he said to me, go to church. He said, go to this church. I'm going to show you. I left everything. I went to the house. As I was in the house where we were staying at that time, it was in my grandmother's place where we were staying at that time. He led me into a church, into a certain church. I remember I moved from place to place, from church to church. I moved from church to church. The first church, I found the church was closed. I went to another church. They were, dancing and celebrating. He didn't allow me to enter in that church. And I went to another church. It's called Nazarene. And there was a pastor there, Pastor Lukele. They were calling him Star Lukele. Pastor Star Lukele. He was a pastor in the Nazarene church. So he led me to that church. I came faster. It was as if something is pushing me or someone is pulling me, but I couldn't see him. So I entered the church, and as I entered, it was like everybody, because they knew me from the place. I was not going to church, and I was just living a life, you can think of. But as I came in, everybody was like, wow, this one is coming to church. Thank God. I sat there as the pastor was preaching, only to discover that the pastor had a dream. He had a dream where he saw me coming to the church. At that time in the church, there was no prophecy. Prophecy was not something that they followed. They were not even speaking in other tongues. They were not even speaking in tongues in that church. They were not even clapping hands. Some of you will know how Nazarene, how they were working in the past. So, and from there, he started telling a dream that he saw. A dream that he saw in the night. And how that a young man entered the church. And he says the young man was overloaded. And he was instructed in the dream to take the load off the young man, or of the man that entered the church. And as he was sharing the dream, he also spoke about a wonderful scripture in the book of Timothy that I will never forget, where he spoke about the end time. He spoke about the end time. He spoke about how people become lovers of themselves, how this will be this. And as I was sitting on the chair, I was thinking to myself, worried, why am I here? Why am I here? How did I come here? Why am I in this church? Why? And I was waiting earnestly to find out why was I at the church. And I thought he was going to tell me. So after that, after saying everything about the dream and how he offloaded the young man, and after offloading the young man, fire came from above and entered in the young man. He made an example of when you pour water in a sand. He says, when you pour water in the sand, you will not see the water, but the water will enter inside the sand and unite with the sand. That is how he says the fire came from above and it entered in this person that he was instructed to offload. And then from there he heard the voice. He said he heard the voice saying, he is my son, he's my servant. Tell him I have sent him to set people free, to open their eyes, and to deliver them from captivity, from the power of the evil one into the power of God. And that was it. And then he said, he stopped his sermon. He said, let everybody stand up. And he started praying. As he was praying, I kept on praying. I said, Lord, if it's you, reveal yourself, show yourself. Show yourself. If it's you, show yourself. And then what God did, I don't know whether it's God or something, but it became dark all of a suddenly in my face. And there was light that went bash on my face. I fell on the ground. As I fell on the ground, I believe I was crying on the ground because I saw a lot of tears on the ground. I saw a lot of tears on the ground as if I was really crying. And nobody took care because it was not a church that was in deliverance. There was no deliverance taking place in that church. There was no speaking of tongues. There was nothing. And that's where God met me. So after the service, when everybody left the church, I said, I'm not leaving this church. I want to wait here until this man tell me what was happening to me. And at that time, I think I was about 1920 or so. That was the encounter that changed everything in my life, that made me to pursue the vision of God. So from there, after the church, I waited. He sent people, go look for this man. They looked for me. Fortunately, I was waiting for him to tell me what was going on, to explain to me what was happening. So he explained. I went to him. He took me to a private room, and then he started ministering to me, started praying for me. It was 5 of us. There were 3 guys and me and him. So he started praying for me. As he was praying for me, he started talking some things that came into his spirit at the same time. A man that had never prophesied. A man that had never prophesied. Even though he believed in prayer. But he was not even speaking in other tongues. There was no tongue, nothing. So he started telling me certain things that was shown to him in the dream. And then he said, when God located me in the church, he knew that this is the one. So he prayed. He said, this is the man that you have sent me to, or that you sent me, that you spoke about, that you told me about. And as he was praying, the fire, it was as if they are putting coils of fire on my head. And everybody jumped, and everybody started screaming. We fell down, everybody fell down. I started speaking in tongues that first day. That's why I don't remember going for sessions where I'm imparted tongues. No, I don't remember such. I started speaking in tongues in that day. Leaving from there, going to the house, I closed myself to the house. I closed myself in my house. I started praying. I said, I want to pray until the same experience I had in church comes again. And I started praying. I prayed. I went home a changed person. Everybody at home, everywhere, they saw a change. I went back to school. When I went to school, there was a great change. I remember there were pastors who came to preach in our school. As they were preaching, they started praying. When they were praying, the same experience came upon me that came in the church. I fasted in other tongues. I called the name of Jesus. I started praying in the assembly, during the assembly, when everyone was waiting, was there. And I felt like, oh boy, this thing is exposing me, because I couldn't hold it. There was fire burning all over my bones. Everybody thought, what has happened to Alex? They took me to after the assembly square, everything, teachers started calling me. What's happening? What's going on? Are you the one, being known as a naughty guy at school, and suddenly it's just a weekend, and then in the following week I am now a deep Christian. I'm fasting in tongues. I'm praying. I'm calling the name of Jesus, and demons are manifesting and things are happening. Started from school. I started prophesying now. I started prophesying. I was seeing visions. I was seeing things and telling teachers, telling students what I've seen. And from there I joined the group that was in LCO. I worked on my salvation. I didn't want to lose it, because when I received it, I felt so nice in my spirit. I felt a great fulfillment in my life. I saw my life taking a new meaning altogether. From there, I started joining prayers. I started joining guys who were preaching at school, guys who were praying at school, guys. I started going into, to the same church where the Lord met me, and joining intercessors. I remember the first time, from there I did a 7 days prayer and fasting. After the 7 days prayer and fasting, I think I ate one day, and I went for a 21 days from a 7 days. A 21 days. I remember I was still new in it, but it was not me. I was led into it. I will fast until I try to scratch myself, and I feel that sometimes I will ask myself, am I in a dream, or this is happening live? And as I grew the human spirit, as I grew my spirit, I discovered that my body was now aligning with my spirit. So I was no longer going through the sleepwalking thing, because my body was now aligning with my spirit. So instead of doing sleepwalking, my spirit tells my body, wake up. So my body was now responding, I'll wake up, I'll pray. And the Lord started giving me instructions from there. He will give me instruction, go to this place and pray. Go to this place and pray. Sometimes he'll say, I remember it was at night. He said, go out to a forest. I went to that forest at night. I was alone. I went to that forest. He said, pray. He'll show me a vision. I remember I saw something falling from the sky, and it was like it's falling on the ground. And in that place, I said, go there and pray. I went there. I prayed. I went back home. He will say, stand up, pray. He will show me things that are happening in the yard, things that are happening to other people, and I'll start praying. My eyes opened when I was in that fasting, the 21 days prayer and fasting. I remember I was in a night prayer alone. What happened, I could see people, not when I'm asleep. I was in the church. I did a whole night prayer alone. I could see people through the walls. I could see what was happening through the walls inside the temple, inside the church. I could see beyond the walls. I remember there was a guy who was always coming at 3 o'clock, coming to the church to pray. I saw him leaving his house, coming to the church. When he was about to enter the church, I saw him stretching his hand, opening the door. And when he was opening the door, I opened it for him. He was shocked. He asked me, how did you see me? How did you know I'm coming? I told him, I saw you when you were coming from the house. This is what you did. This is what you did. This is what you did when you left the house. And unfortunately enough, the people that I'm talking about, the pastor and these guys and these people that I'm talking about, they are still alive. One day, they will be in our TV to testify and to witness that they were there when God appointed this day and introduced me into my assignment. So I was saying, going back and looking all those things, it clearly showed that I was born into the prophetic. I was born into the prophetic office, because I remember in the same, time when I was doing the fastings and all this, I had another great vision where it was as if I'm taken into the sky. I was not in heaven. It was as if I'm taken into the sky. When I was into the sky, it was as if a certain door is opening in the spirit. In the sky. And I saw a man that was sitting on a chair. He was like he's sitting on the chair, and he was holding a scroll, a big scroll. And then he threw it to me. As he threw it to me, as I was trying to catch it in my vision, it disappeared, it melted in me. And I woke up. When I woke up, I could not say it was Jesus. I knew when I woke up that I had seen the Apostle Paul. From that day, scriptures were coming to me, even scriptures that I had not read were coming when I was ministering, when I was teaching. Verses that I had not read were coming into my remembrance, in my spirit. They were just launched in my remembrance, and I would speak about it as if I had read about them, or I had read them somewhere, and I would start talking about them, dividing. And all of a sudden, the group that I had joined, I became their teacher. Because I started breaking down mysteries. I started talking deep mysteries. Revelations were given to me. I remember another vision where I was taken. This time it was an angel. It was an angel, the same angel that spoke to me when he was calling me, and it was the same angel that was standing with me when I was still, 12 years down there. And this time he took me. It was as if he's taking me into a green place. It was like a green place, and I saw a lot of people, beautiful people, and there were rivers, there were mountains. It was such, people were so connected with nature, with animals, it was just beautiful. And I asked him, I said, what is this place? He said to me, this is the new world of the new creation. This is the life that the new creation is living in the spirit. Then he started showing me several things from scripture, how that, God wanted Moses to take the children of Israel from Egypt into Canaan. And when he stood on a mountain, he saw Canaan, and God said, that is the beautiful place that I want my people to go. And how Caleb and Joshua and their team went to spy the land, and they saw the beauty that was there, the life that was there, everything that was wonderful in that place, and all that, and how Jesus was taken into the mountain, and he saw Elijah and Moses when he was about to take the new creation into the other place. Then the angel said to me, go and interpret the life of a new creation. That's why my ministry is deep in interpreting the life of a new creation. We might not be much more in preaching about sin, about all that, but we show the new creation who he is, so that he lives fully in his purpose. He lives fully in his place, because there's a place, a special place of the new creation. So I kept seeing visions after visions, and taken into visions and visions, into Mara, into different kinds of visions in the spirit. I remember this other time I was taken into the sea when the angel of the Lord was showing me the depth of the power of the evil one. He took me into a place that was like a sea. It was like a sea, and suddenly a rock appeared, and we stood on top of the rock with the angel. We stood on top of the rock, and as we were standing there, he was telling me a lot of deep things, some things I'm yet about to unveil and talk about. He started showing me a lot of things, and he showed me how people are kept as captives. He showed me a lot of things, a lot of mysteries, and I understood them. But what's more interesting to me is the experience of having the likes of the prophets, different prophets, such as Daniel in my vision, Daniel, Jeremiah, seeing Isaiah, and having the experience of going to heaven and being part of the meetings and the planning of the year. The Bible says the Lord doeth nothing unless he reveals the mystery to his servants, the prophets. Being part of the meeting, the council of the prophets. It's one thing that keeps me so humble, because his elections are not according to works and are not according to how people may view you and think of you. It is just a very humbling experience to me. And much more than that, I'm so grateful to God for what he's about to do to the nations of the world, and how the gospel and the things that he had shown me into visions are coming to pass. Are being manifested. It is true that I have learned so much to different ministers of the gospel, different men of God, but mainly I have learned, administrations and handling the church and all those things, and how to lead people and how to work with that. With people in the society with which we live. And I'll be so grateful to several men of God that have impacted in my life, such as Pastor Chris or Oyakilome. I've learned a lot of things in his ministry, such as Pastor Benny Hinn. I've learned a lot in his ministry. Prophet Passion, I've learned a lot in his ministry and his life as a prophet, and I honor that. I honor several men of God, such as Prophet Hubert Angel, and several men of God that you may think of that are doing very well in the gospel, and that has inspired me. It has inspired my growth, and without failure, still pursuing the vision. By the grace of God, we have established Jesus Divine Power International, which started it's 9.5 years. I would say 9.5 years, because now we are in 2018, which makes it about 10 years in ministry. I started the ministry, I was very, very young, very, very young, very, very young. So God being so grateful, we have several branches. We have churches in South Africa, over seven churches in South Africa so far, believing God that we are still expanding, increasing and growing. We have branches in the States, home sales, in Africa at large. We are still, we have sons and daughters all over the world, and we are still planting, churches and expounding and fulfilling the vision that God gave to us. And that means we are still in the message that Jesus gave to us. Without failure, it has to be fulfilled. Without failure, it has to come to pass. There is more that I will continue to say and unveil in my testimony, but as of now, I would like to end here, and God bless everybody watching. This is Prophet Alex Nkambule signing out. God bless you.